What I'd like to do is I would like to have our city manager talk about this issue to start out with and to give us a summary of what's been going on so far and to state a few facts.
Yeah, council members, what you have before you obviously is a workshop discussion about really two issues. And one is we just received in the early part of December a discussion with, or had a discussion with Florida Commerce, otherwise previously known as DEO, or prior to that, DCA, about the outcome of a number of model runs with the hurricane evacuation model. It ran the gambit of we are over 24 hours, which of course is a statutory limit on hurricane evacuation, all the way out to as many as, I believe, as 31 hours in consideration of inclusion of Key West, and before they might propose doing some other things with mobile homes. So anywhere from, we're over 24 at this point to, if we make some changes to the statutes and move it to 31, then potentially they indicated we could cover all of our vacant lot liabilities in the future. That really generated, I think, a conversation amongst all of us as jurisdictions within the Keys. Early part of December, or middle part of December, the County Commission passed a resolution expressing its interest this year and how they want to go about dealing with the issue. No matter what happens, it is an issue. We all have to deal with it. Each of us kind of runs out of ROGO or BPAS units at a little bit different time. We are out of units in July 13th of this year. I believe the county, with the extension of their ROGO process, rate of growth ordinance process, runs out of units in July 13th of 2026. At the time, they just had more units to be able to stretch out than we did. We could only get to 24. So at least the immediate issue for the city of Marathon was we run out now within 6 months. And it is an issue. Do we expect immediate takings cases? No, probably not. But we know we've got 121 permits in the system, 48 of which actually could ask for beneficial use this year, potentially, not necessarily. And then you have that outstanding liability of the other vacant lots that are out there. So I will say, for everything that the county is looking to do right now, staff has looked at that. I know Steve is the attorney, myself, Brian Shea is the planning director, have looked at that. We are in complete agreement, not only with the primary issue that the county brought up, which is the thought that we would move mobile homes as currently permanent population within the county into the first 24 hours of evacuation, which is technically out of the legal 24 hours that we speak of in the Florida statutes that guides us under the area of critical state concern. And there's another issue that they brought up, which became confused because of recent Third District Court of Appeals determinations or opinions that Key West didn't have to abide by the same 24-hour evacuation that the rest of the jurisdictions in the county do. So there's an effort in the statutes this year to clarify that. There's 2 or 3 other things having to do with affordable housing, et cetera, that the county is working on. We've looked at that in combination, and really there's nothing that we wouldn't, well, absolutely all of it we would support. So then, where are the differences? Because of the essential and imperative nature of where we stand as a city with the remaining BPAS allocations. And for the audience, BPAS and ROGO is essentially the same thing. We felt like we needed to take additional steps this year and begin working on the specifics this year. Now, we knew that would be a dialogue. We understand that it'll be a dialogue and it will continue. Not going to be resolved, I suspect, this year. Couldn't make it to the legislature this year anyway, I believe. But we believe probably the data is in place now. County has reams of data that we all put together in the process of providing an annual report to the state that allow us to have a very, very good understanding for where our liabilities are. So with that, we put together, I drafted it, Steve and I and Brian all reviewed it. I think we reviewed it with each of you, the exception of Mr. Gonzalez, and I talked to him over the phone about it, and we moved forward with some draft sort of bullet points, if you will, for discussion. Probably the two things in that discussion that come to the forefront most are the fact that we were suggesting 31-hour, we're changing the statutes, which is 380.0552, Florida statutes, the critical area statute, to 31 hours. In fact, if the mobile home proposal goes forward in front of the legislature this year, that 31 hours would actually be reduced to 28 and a half. And the other thing is that at 31 hours or 28 and a half hours, at that point, we would potentially have allocations enough to handle all the vacant lots that are out there. And so, two issues before you. I mean, the imperative for us today and for the adoption of your resolution in January, and then the discussion items after that, is simply that we're running out of BPAS allocations. And then the longer term issue, which we all face, is that there are a whole bunch of vacant lots out there that would not, under any case after 2026, have an allocation to be provided by any jurisdiction. And that's an issue. So you get into the whole issue of takings cases, which we don't need to deal with tonight. I think everybody has a general understanding for what that means. But it's a critical issue. I think there's been some discussion about, well, why don't we just buy all the land? Well, the reality is, I think on my birthday, I will have entered Florida for the first time 40 years ago, and February 11th, and we've been dealing with land acquisition issues ever since as a county. And I think we've done an outstanding job of doing that, including doing two things in that acquisition. One, acquiring land that is habitat value, and two, frankly, for every lot that's bought and protected in that way, you've eliminated a potential takings issue. So I don't think we have 40 years to deal with the rest of these vacant lots, or maybe not even 10. So yeah, we'll continue, I think, as expressed, to seek all of the purchases we can. That'll be done through the state and the land authority. The county runs the land authority. But the issues that we presented to you and some of the options that we would wish to discuss as to how we would issue or how we would deal with the issue of the possibility of changing the statutes in the future, the next year, year after. I think I've laid out reasonably well in the document that you've got in front of you. You want me to go over those? I can, but I think what it really gets down to is we need to get to the point of agreeing that there's a dialogue that we need to have. I think our discussions deliberatively with the county, really just in the last week or 10 days, have been informative. And so I could go on, and then get into more detail, as I think Steve or Brian could, but I would, I guess, at least open it up for discussion with you guys, and I know there's a number of people that will want to speak up on behalf of the public as well.
Thank you. Do we want to hear speakers first, or do...
I always have something to say.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and comment first, and then we will welcome our speakers. So, Mr. Matlock.
Oh, George, did anybody help facilitate this or write it, or
I wrote it.
you wrote it? There's no one,
No,
nothing. How I thought you mentioned a certain builder that was helping with this
I
at our
don't know
meeting.
what builder that would be. I didn't mention a builder at all.
Oh, that was Spotswoods. I thought you said they could get that through there.
No.
No.
I mean, it's possible that Spotswoods can do, they have fairly good control of, well, I won't say control, they have fairly good interaction with a number of members on the legislature. But
Man, I'm going to have to go back over that. I thought when we were in that meeting on Tuesday, that's what you said. Steve, do you remember if he said that?
I think there were 4 of us in the room at the time, and I know George has had contact with several people regarding it in terms of the extent and with whom. If he mentioned Spotswoods by name or not, it's possible, but
Okay. Okay. The other thing I was going to ask, I thought we talked about on Tuesday, I remember us talking about it. I thought you weren't going to request specific numbers, but that obviously changed between then and that conversation and the
No,
draft and the actual letter.
when I handed you the document that day, it had the numbers that I just spoke to then at that time, and I clearly discussed it.
Because I remember asking, the answer was no, so,
No, it wasn't.
yeah, okay. I would have pulled it and argued it, but we'll move on past
Please,
that, I guess.
Please. Anybody else? Councilmember Gonzalez?
Chime in, absolutely. There's no doubt that this is a serious issue, and it's been a serious issue for many, many years. And now the seriousness is before us, because here in Marathon, you've said it, we run out in the summer, and a couple years from now, the county runs out. So yes, this is a conversation that's been had at the state level, and I feel that this is a conversation that needs to continue being had. This is, it's not going to stop. I mean, there's potential taking cases throughout the county and throughout the different municipalities. I see that there's several folks here from the county, including the county administrator. There's some on Zoom. I guess I would ask the question to them. We run out in this year, the 24. Is there any way that we could enter in discussions with you guys, our legal staff, our administrator, with you guys, see if we could potentially get some allocations from you on a loan and extend us out to 2026? That way we could go at it as a united front and continue discussions until 2026.
Good evening, everybody, and good evening to council and new councilmen that I have met. Welcome. Roman Gastesi, County Administrator. First, I've heard of it this afternoon, or actually this morning, and I always bring the attorney with me because obviously there's legalities involved, right? So we would entertain it. What we would ask is that you make an official request, either tonight or in writing or something. We do have a meeting on the 31st, county commission meeting, and obviously this is a policy decision. Mm-hmm. We've done it before for affordables. Are you asking for market rate or affordables, or what are you asking for?
I would say let's ask for some of both.
Okay.
Some market rate and some affordables, and we would just have to adjust what we give out, so that way the ask isn't too great, and we could have some to give out for the next couple of years.
Sure. Again, I think if you're ready to make that request tonight, great. Let's get it over with, and then we can discuss it. Mechanically, the attorney's here. You want to talk about that?
We would figure out a way. It might involve an interlocal. It might involve a 380 agreement involving Department of Commerce. Those are the, we'd have to look at your code and comp plan, our code and comp plan, and what provisions are already there for, swapping these. We've sent we've loaned, we've given in the past through interlocal for affordables. And I believe our code and comp plan contemplates that. I'd have to go back and check to see if it was for market rate. So it's a process. We can work our way through it. We're certainly available and amenable to it.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
I mean, hearing that, I think it would be crazy of us not to ask the county for a loan, or however we want to phrase it, for the next couple of years. That way, we both have time to work out the best way possible to get to the finish line.
I agree. Our goal at the end of the day is to make the best decision for everybody here in the Keys, and we need to work together to do that. And so I absolutely agree. And tonight's just the first of many, many discussions that we need to have. There are a lot of factors that even I didn't consider until I talked to Michelle Lincoln the other day. So I think that we all need to work together, and if that would help us to extend our timeline, that's not a bad idea. Anybody else?
I'm sure there's going to be some discussion about this, or not, maybe. But I'd certainly love to see that a motion, and I know there'll be quite a number of people that want to speak to the overall issue. But I think for the sake of the county's interest, if there is the will on the part of the council to make that request, then I would ask you to do it.
Mr. Williams?
We know better than that. It's a workshop.
It's a
We're
workshop.
not having a motion. There's no decisive action to be taken.
You're right.
But that being said, everyone in the room can observe which direction heads are moving. I don't see them really moving side to side. They seem to be going up and down, which is enough to provide direction to staff to work with Mr. Schillinger and get this done. Go ahead, Bob.
I would just ask, is there anybody violently opposed to us proceeding on these discussions? Okay.
All right, I'm stealing that phrase. We're going with violently opposed in future motions.
I do have one question. I'm just one of those people, I don't like debt. We borrow them from you. Let's say something happens at the state level and we don't get more to replace yours. What does that look like?
I was just thinking about that, exactly. And it's funny,
guarantee.
because I think as we move forward through the year, and we have all these robust public meetings and things that we want to do, I think there's two things that need to be taken off the table. Roman speaking, me, not my bosses. But the fact that we're not going to get any, and I'll talk to those folks, and that's just not going to happen. We need some. We need some. And the other thing, the other extreme, that we're going to get all 7,954, I don't think 7,954 qualify as buildable. We're doing that assessment now, right? And that's why we wanted to kind of just slow down a little bit and see how many of those are. Is it 1,000 that aren't buildable, that are underwater, 2 feet underwater? And we can go to court and say, come on, guys. Is it 2,000, 3,000? We don't know. We're doing that evaluation. So those two extremes should be taken off the table soon. I know we're going to have a lot of discussions on it. But I was thinking the same thing. How about if we get none? How about if we land on none? Then the county gave away units that we're going to use anyways. This is the population center, and this is a 4-lane highway, and that's where we justify giving you 200 or 300 that we've given you in the past. So we're all in the county. We're all in the county family. We all live here. So it doesn't matter if it's Marathon or county. We made that decision a long time ago. So that's how Romans speaks. Again, we need to talk to the county commissioners about that. But I was just thinking the same thing. So if you can quantify it tonight too, give us like a range. Are we talking 10? Are we talking 100? Are we talking 50? Just more or less. I know we can't hold you to it because it's a workshop. The attorneys always remind us of that. But give us some kind of range if you just throw some numbers out to help us.
Okay, well, I'm willing to do that. Since we're talking about a 2-year period, I would ask in the neighborhood of up to 50.
Mr. Williams?
No, I was just going to say, I don't see Emily Skimper here tonight, but Brian, our version of your Emily is sitting closest to you, Roman, but is 50 enough to keep us more or less on track? And
Yes.
so as long as planning on both sides of it can work out those numbers, and
Right.
Bob, Roman, Emily, Brian, they all agree with it legally, I think that certainly helps stem our exposure.
Okay, so I think we have a direction here to work together, and then would we want to put this on the agenda at our next council meeting to
Yes.
move forward? So if we'll put that down, we'll put that
I
on
would
our.
say
and then
yes, but
To continue
actually-
discussions, not
yeah.
to,
Right, is that before the 31st? Or you guys meet?
no, sir, it's
What do
going to
we
be next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we can work that out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, thank you very much.
By the
Mr.
way, I have
Mabry?
to do the protocol thing. 3 commissioners are here tonight, so Commissioner Cates, Commissioner Scholl, and Commissioner Rice are here tonight, so obviously this is an important topic for us. The other 2 are out of town. I see
And the mayor.
mayor's on the
She's
line,
leaving.
so thank you for having us.
Yep,
Thank you for
Thank you
being
very
here.
much for being here.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think that the direction that we took has pretty much done exactly what we would like to do, is to start conversations. We do run out of building permits this year, and our goal was to start conversations this year, not kick the can down the road like it's been kicked down for many, many years. So I'm glad we're moving forward in that direction.
Anybody else? Okay. Now, we'll move on to our speakers.
Excuse me. John Bardis.
And if you're coming up to speak, just a reminder, you'll be speaking on this topic. We have another discussion after this, so you'll have an opportunity to speak if you're wanting to speak on the quay afterwards. Sorry, sir.
No, you're quite all right. John Bardis, Marathon, and I'm very encouraged with what I just heard. Thanks very much to our friends and colleagues in the county, and hopefully get something good going on with there. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, council. One of the things that we have to worry about, and like I said, this thing is the can's been kicked down the road, is that Marathon runs out of permits this summer. And the dialogue that started with your taking that action on that resolution and getting the dialogue started is a whole lot of relief in terms of more of the soon-to-be possibly accelerated takings cases that would happen in this jurisdiction. So I, as a taxpayer in the city of Marathon, I don't want to be buying everybody else's property. And I think the state, this also gives us time to have negotiations with the state on their role in what they owe in the eventual takings cases that do result. I don't know how many people here were going to county commission meetings back in the 1980s. I know you were. Yep. And we all remember when the initial ROGO came out and came down, and at some point we were going to run out. The state needs to acknowledge their responsibility, and this gives us a little breathing room in terms of takings cases, but I totally commend the direction that you have gone with that resolution and getting that dialogue started, and from here on out, hopefully will be better days and fewer takings claims. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker.
Joshua Mothner.
Josh Mothner, Marathon resident, also contracted housing coordinator for the city of Marathon, but I'll be speaking as myself, as Josh Mothner tonight. Just a couple of things. I wanted to come up here and talk a little bit about control, because I think we just watched something to me that's amazing. We're here at a workshop, and boy, that sort of seemed like that was all worked out already. That's great. I think that's the way things are supposed to work. But I actually am involved in an interlocal agreement with the county on some units that came to this city, and we are having some difficulties trying to get something accomplished that should be fairly easy to do. I think we will. I think everybody's got good intentions, but careful what we wish for in the long run. The bottom line is, I think everybody, whether you're for them or against them, you want to have control, and that's what doing this does. Asking for them, trying to get them, getting the dialogue started is great, but we want to control this. And Mayor Still, I got to say this, with all due respect, your job up there is actually to represent this city, not the people of the Monroe County. And while it may be beneficial for us to make a deal with Monroe County, I don't know whether 50 is enough. Maybe they are. But that's who you all need to be representing when it comes to this discussion. For those of us that hear, and we've heard it from a number of places, there's a number of items and issues with this that everybody's been bandying about. Is 7,000, as Mr. Gassesi just said. I don't think anybody here that wants you to do this wants you to take 8,000 or 7,000 units. I don't think any of us expect that that's what's going to happen. But we do need units. I would love you to make them all vacation rentals. I mean, excuse me.
Mr. Mothner, the railroad is ready.
There you go. Freudian slips are amazing things. They're actually called, there's a word for them. Go listen to Elvis Presley sing certain songs and you'll understand what paraplexis is.
I need you to wrap it up, sir.
Allocation, okay? Allocations, that's what I'm talking about. I want to make them all affordable. We're not going to do that. I want to make them all owner-occupied. Maybe we'll do that. The point is, you should deliberate about what we need. We have not had a chance to control our own destiny in the city of Marathon since we incorporated. We can't control our own destiny on vacation rentals because somebody up there told us we can't do it. We're now about to probably, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, make a deal for somebody else to tell us what we can and what we can't do. Not sure that's the greatest thing for us. We need to control our own destiny, and you all have an absolute ability, without question, to make it as stringent as it needs to be in order that we don't give them out. And if we're going to stop doing this or dawdle...
Sir, I need you to wrap it up.
Yeah, it's a workshop. I had to listen to half an hour of other stuff. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take them.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Captain Ed Davidson, Chairman of the Florida Keys Citizens Coalition.
And for the record, former chairman of the zoning board and the comprehensive plan advisory panel when critical concern was implemented. I was also in the cabinet room in front of the governor and cabinet when critical concern was adopted. My focus is on the deliberately deceptive flaws in the evacuation study. These are the sworn minutes from the trial that happened right in this room on the 1,300 ROGO additional units that were issued. This is sworn testimony by the state's acknowledged expert on all the hurricane evacuation modeling. There's no way I can get through this in a measly 2 minutes, but if you'd like quotes from the state's leading expert as a matter of law, sworn testimony, proceedings of court, this is a guy who invented the model, who ran the model. Here's the first interesting quote. Monroe County model runs at some level present an artificial run because they essentially are a Monroe County only evacuation. And the statewide regional evacuation study program, which this guy also ran, all of our planning scenarios were regional scenarios. Out of the 67 counties in this state, other 6 were simultaneous adjacent county evacuation studies, the realistic. The Monroe County study, honest to God, presumes that while we are all fleeing for our lives from the Florida Keys from a killer hurricane, that nobody from Homestead to West Palm Beach has left the house. It's in the study, and I testified to this in Marathon and Key Largo when the task force was down here, and their final statement was that they were going to rerun the same model with some tweaks. Well, there's lots of other flaws, but that's the biggest one. When they ran the 2010...
Captain Davis, I need you to wrap it up, sir.
Okay, and the 2010 model, here's how serious this stuff can be. The 2010 model run that he did, they reran it in 2014 and discovered that somehow 6,100 vehicles had been deleted from the data blanks in the study. When he reran the study The evacuation time is 26.5 hours when you put those back in. That's sworn testimony by the state's leading model expert. We're already at 26.5. He was asked
Sir,
if he ever did a 3-county simultaneous evac model. He did. He said the numbers are in the high 30s.
thank you, sir. We call our next speaker, please.
Jill Davis.
Hello and good evening. So I came to speak about the permits. The quote that I was told was around 8,000 for the county, the building permits. And so with development, my concern is infrastructure and also traffic. And so I was remembering in our county book here, our lovely Monroe County book that I look into. And so the Land Authority has these great programs, and it's just my suggestion to keep down on development because we already complain all the time about traffic and about infrastructure and about people in the service industries, that provide services for the existing people in our county right now and city. So because I know this is a city council, city of Marathon, and it's supposed to be mainly directed at the focus of, our concerns for the city of Marathon. But to keep with the environment and with the infrastructure and, the impact that would have, like these permits, already there's been, concern in the past about people keeping up with code compliance and things of that nature. So those are just points I'd like to make with developing, that we do have programs too, that we could do incentives like the density reduction from the Land Authority and resale programs and the less than fee program, which are really great because it incentivizes people to not build on their properties and, to use them for different things like storage or like a pool or what have you. So those are the points I'd like to make about developing those permits. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
We call our next speaker, please.
Ann Olson.
Good evening. I'm Ann Olson speaking on behalf of Keys Last Stand. And throughout this whole hurricane evacuation modeling process, Florida Commerce repeatedly states public safety and the environment are the top priorities, and we hope you'll truly consider those as priorities and not just give them lip service. We were concerned about much of the language we saw in both the draft and the resolution, and hope that given tonight's discussion, maybe now you will participate in the county's year-long review in terms of how many are the correct number of buildable lots that are left? What is the least harmful way to add a number of ROGOs throughout the county? We were very concerned about the language about 31 hours and the 8,000 additional building allocations, because that really opens up opening up anything beyond 24 hours opens it up, forevermore, because later it can be changed to 36 hours, 42, or 48 hours. We saw this happen in Fort Myers Beach, and 150 people died. With our single road, for the most part, our 130-mile evacuation route, it's going to be a lot worse here. So even considering that 24-hour evacuation period to be safe seems like wishful thinking, given that in the last 5 years, concepts like rapid intensification of hurricanes has gone from, an obscure weather term to common everyday language. A study just this past fall came out with a new term, extreme rapid intensification. So it's happening more and more with warming oceans. And we know public safety was the top reason for growth limitations, but these were all guardrails meant to be a surrogate for carrying capacity. And that's obviously the ability for our fragile environment to handle more humans, more roads, more waste, and to have enough drinking water. We already have reduced water pressure. We've got that aged water pipeline that needs complete replacement, not to mention impaired sanctuary waters, urgent bridge repairs, sea level rise projects, all at a cost of billions. I'll just quickly wrap up. The numbers I want to point out have already been tweaked to allow for maximum growth. Things that used to be vacant are now used as either legal or illegal vacation rentals. And so regardless of what's on paper, mobile homes are in, mobile homes are out, these folks are going to be on the roads on US 1 during evacuation, along with residents, lagging visitors, vacation renters who don't know what our procedures are. So we hope that the pressure to develop doesn't dictate public safety policies, and we count on you, the leadership of Marathon, to help make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. If you'll call our next speaker, please.
Craig Cates.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here. Our next speaker?
Could we ask him if he violently opposes the concept?
Maybe not now.
Peter Levasser.
Hello, everyone. I'm a Marathon resident, and I'm here to speak about three things that I'm worried about. How this 8,000 more ROGOs will affect Monroe County. It's a radically extreme proposal, that number. And the three things that I'm hearing from many residents that I've spoken to in the last week or so is that the disappearance of green space, population density, and the stress on our water system. Those are three important things. And 8,000 more units here will promote the Miamification and the uglification of Monroe County. Do you want this county to turn into Miami? I mean, give us a break. Please don't allow 8,000. I don't know what the right number is, but 8,000 is a radically extreme amount of residents.
Thank you, sir.
Diane Scott.
Diane Scott, Marathon, Florida. You know, you all should give people more than 2 minutes to speak. That time goes real fast. And when something smells fishy, it's fishy. I don't know what to say about you all up there on that council. When you all need to do your job, you don't. It's something fishy because the county commissioner, they're already here. They had this stuff already planned out. Y'all know, you got one of you all up there that's really not right. And I just feel sorry for y'all on this council. Really, I do. Y'all need to get it, y'all act together. You don't want to do your job, don't be up there, step down. But something is fishy about all this, and I don't care what nobody say. And matter of fact, when y'all have these workshops, y'all need to, I've been asking to speak at the workshop for longest, and I want to speak on law enforcement. And don't ignore it. Don't cut me off.
Ma'am, tonight.
Yes, we talk. I'm talking about. I know
you're out of order. The topic is.
I know what it's
BPAS, and that's what we need to say.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the BPAS too. Something fishy about this, And if you're gonna ask for something, you ask for something. I could see if you asking for 1,000, because this Marathon is a small town. You can't be billing all this stuff. I could see if you were asking for something in the number like 1,000, but it's big people behind this. And y'all know it, because Marathon is corrupt, and y'all know that. And it's sad. I live here, and I'm not going nowhere. And I'm going to check you all if you like it or not. And you can get mad about it, and you don't have to pick up the phone and answer my calls, but something is fishy about this.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker, please.
Mark Miller.
Yes, I'm Mark Miller, and I'm a City of Marathon resident. I was flabbergasted when I saw the City of Marathon requested 8,000 ROGO units to Representative Mooney. It blew my mind. I have no idea. I said last council meeting, I would have never expected that request to come from the city of Marathon. That request was irresponsible to request 8,000 units. It risks the safety of the Marathon city residents. It puts our fragile ecosystem at risk, and it puts undue stress on our inadequate infrastructure. The driving force behind this seems to be takings cases, and I'm all for managing takings cases, but I think that this is being really overblown. I don't think it's the risk and the reality of what's being communicated to the public. I think the city hasn't really done its homework to truly understand what the potential liability is. And the approach of just requesting more ROGOs is a very limited approach. It's not looking at the other risks that get created by encouraging all of these additional ROGOs. I'm very concerned about the infrastructure, in particular the water. As we know, we had a couple of water main breaks last spring. They had to reduce water pressures, and we weren't able to flush our toilets. We weren't getting adequate water to our upstairs toilets. We had neighbors that ice makers wouldn't work. We had a neighbor that washing machine wouldn't work. And this is all because of a undersized, ancient water system that's going to require over $100 million to replace. So we have serious issues that the Keys are facing, and your request is just let us build more without really taking into account all those other aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker is Michael Ottery.
Good evening, council members. My name is Michael Ottery, and I'm the City of Marathon resident. I'll try to get right to the crux of the matter because a lot of folks have already touched on a lot of the things I was going to say, so hopefully it won't be too long. I don't know about the rest of you, but it was interesting that one of the comments that came out very early on in this meeting that was, let's work together. But as I read and research things, it's apparently other stakeholder partners of other governmental areas in the Keys were apparently blindsided by the City of Marathon's support of the approval by the state legislature of these 8,000 building units. I guess I read, as many of you possibly have, that the position by the city was taken based on no one showing up at meetings to discuss the proposal. I don't feel that's a very good, valid argument, in my opinion. Government officials are elected and hired to look out for the interests of constituents and the communities they serve. It also, from what I'm told, contradicts an agreement between one of our state representatives, Jim Mooney, and Monroe County. It's a proven fact that it's reckless and self-serving when government makes decisions that affect the safety of constituents, and I truly believe this does impact the safety. I say this based on the numbers portrayed in the hurricane evacuation modeling that some folks know a lot more about than I do. Not into the modeling business. But if the bill passes, the numbers will increase to the hurricane evacuation times for residents, and don't forget tourists who don't even know that this is all happening. They're just here, from 24 hours to 31 hours. Now, it's fairly obvious to me that developer pressure has somewhat entered into the equation of this decision, which is about to be made by a lot of officials, this Florida state government, and supported by the City of Marathon, at the expense of the constituents and people supposed to be serving. That's my time, I get that, but let's do something now before it's too late and we're stuck with trying to build or get our way out of the problem that we're creating. So thank you for listening to my plea.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Pamela Mayberry.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm also flabbergasted at this request for the 8,000 additional spots. The city has increased the ROGO/density several times after promising that they would not for decades. I live on Cocoa Plum, and we keep on getting more and more people or more units given to our area, and it's going to be terrible when the 124 units are being built right across from where I live. I'm not going to be able to get out of my community. I think it's environmentally irresponsible for the critical concerns of our islands that we're thinking of adding 8,000 more units to all of the islands. And I think about Key West and how those people are going to get out of here. It reminds me of Henry Flagler with the hurricane and the train that came down, and the train couldn't get back because the hurricane hit before they could get out. It's going to be the same thing. There are too many people already, and as Mike said, you know, the poor renters that don't have a clue as to what's going on. We have issues of water, our fragile infrastructure. Electricity is on and off occasionally. Getting off the islands, traffic as a whole every day is terrible. When you're talking about a hurricane, you're talking 31 hours to get people off of here. I just think it's I think it's terrible. The quality of life of we residents is going to disintegrate, and as just somebody said about the islands becoming Miami South. I mean, look at Key Largo. They're already Miami South. I'm surprised that you can pass a resolution without discussing amongst the council and public input. We are your constituents. You need to include us in your thought process. Evacuation with Irma was a nightmare. I don't know if you were here. I'm hoping you were here and you had to evacuate with the rest of us.
I need you to wrap it up, ma'am.
Okay. Certainly property owners know the cutoff date of people that have these 1,025 properties, which has been pushed back several times for decades. If not, has the city notified these people, either written or called them and asked them what they plan to do? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Cheryl Miller.
Good evening, Council. I'm Cheryl Miller. I'm a resident of Marathon, a taxpayer, and a voter here. And I appreciate you creating a forum for us to share our thoughts. I agree with everything that has been said about the concerns of the carrying ability of the Keys, and most importantly, the safety of the residents that live here. Our lives are literally in your hands. And as you think about liability, I ask you to put two things on that scale. One, the liability of these taking cases, and on the other side, the liability of the lives of the 8,000 people that live here in Marathon, and the rest of us, 84,000 or so that live throughout the Keys. So I'm going to focus on those taking cases. I personally think that that liability is being significantly overblown. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Richard Grosso, a respected attorney here in Florida. On March 1st, 2021, he prepared an analysis of property rights issues in the limited growth system here in the Florida Keys. I will forward you, each of you, this 19-page document. I ask, if you do one thing for me, you read this document and you familiarize yourself with his analysis. I will summarize that he concludes the law of property rights is far more protective of government's ability to strictly regulate property than is commonly understood. And overall, it is his opinion that one, governmental defense against any such claims are numerous and strong, and two, the potential number of privately owned lots that have a potentially valid takings claims is not as great as often is assumed. So in conclusion, I ask that the city, one, spend time preparing a strong defense against taking cases that may come. They're eventually going to come. We need to be investing our time in responding to those takings cases. And two, that includes taking time to analyze actually how many valid cases, keyword, valid cases exist. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Gerald Oglesby.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker is Matthew Sexton.
Good evening, Council. Matt Sexton, Marathon resident, business owner, planning commissioner. I'm sure you guys are having really a good time up there tonight. Thanks for dealing with us. Biggest thing I would like to kind of address is the things that we can control. It's clear, you know, our hands are tied with the issues that come down from Tallahassee and all of these wonderful legal things that are coming to us. I hear it on the planning commission a lot. The one thing I know that we can deal with is affordable housing. I think we have 25 units that are allocated right now to builders that were set on a timeline to build their units, have not done so, and I believe there's 40 to 50 other applications. I have a few in there myself, where we'd love to be able to employ more people who live in this town, work for local businesses, and want to raise families here. In the event that we do have to go down this road and get more allocations, you know, kind of along the lines of what Mr. Mothner said, to be able to, you know, allocate those specifically to affordable units and do so in a way that is actually affordable, not what the current math is, because that won't allow for, you know, the existence of a middle class in this community. We're heavily weighted in terms of the demographics that do live here that kind of skew that metric of affordable housing to be simply not affordable in any way, shape, or form. It kind of makes it possible in the event that we do get these, it's much more attractive for a large developer to build an affordable unit here because he's going to rent it for a much larger sum than he would in any other part of the continental, you know, North America, United States. So let's control what we can. If we can, you know, allocate the rights that we've already given out and require the people to do what they were told to do on the timeline that they agreed to do it on, or take those rights away from them and allow people to do it who are currently employing people in this town, that would be a great step, since those are something that we currently have in pocket. And outside of that, moving forward, move these to affordables and aggressively make it so that we do not let more developers come in and take these units to turn them into vacation homes and other things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is George Nugent.
Madam Mayor and Councilman and Robin, congratulations on your seat as mayor. I haven't seen you since November, I don't think, with all the things that have been going on with the holidays. But I'm speaking as a Marathon resident right now and having concern about the seriousness of this issue, and it's going to require a lot more discussions. And I want to thank the the city administrator and also the city attorney for making a presentation before the county commission at their last county commission meeting in Key Largo. I was there. They played their hand very transparently as to what they were going to do. And I actually applaud what they're going to do because of the seriousness of this situation. And I'll just give you, and the folks here who don't think this is a serious issue, the liability that the county and the municipalities affect based upon information that the county has put out. There is a total of, from the standpoint of parcels and liability, on the city of Marathon, $135 million, $548,863. Layton has a liability of $3 million, I'll round it off. Key Colony Beach has a liability of $28 million, and Isla Mirada has a liability, potential liability of $169 million. So as I think John Bardis, former Mayor John Bardis said, I don't want to be paying for land that who started this discussion was DEO. It didn't have to come from Tallahassee before George got back to Marathon about all the misinformation that was going out that I've been hearing. The best model that we can have is to continue to manage the issues of the permits in the same manner that we've been managing this over the last 20 plus years. In fact, someone was sitting around the table at a discussion position that I was having with friends and did the math on that, and he said it'd be 143 years before we could give out those 8,000 allocations if we kept giving them out at the rate we're presently giving them out. I'd also point out...
I need you to wrap it up, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Time goes fast, but we need a lot more time to discuss this issue. But I applaud the City Council for putting this on the table for further discussion starting now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker is Patricia McGrath. And Ms. McGrath, I have both of your cards here if you want to speak on them together.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening. I don't think that there's anybody in this room that actually believes Exhibit A is a fact. As far as the takings go, the takings happen when a property is going to be for public use and public safety, and there must be just compensation. Well, if say it's 30 years it's going to take to distribute some of these BPAS. Would you rather have a building permit today or a building permit in 30 years? So the value of how long it's going to take for some of these building permits to be given is not as dramatic as Mr. Williams seems to think that it is. Part of our problem is we have failed as a city for years. We're still messing with the quay, for God's sakes. How much money has been spent trying to figure out what's going on there? This building is a screw up.
Ma'am, I need you to stick to the topic, and that's the hurricane evacuation.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. I would just like to say that there are several errors in this document. We are in danger. It took me 7 hours to get off from Grassy Key to Homestead the other day because of an accident. What's going to happen if there's an accident when we try to leave? So we have a choice of either dying in our house or in our car. That's what y'all have given us. I've been at this since the 80s when this ROGO thing started, and it's just constantly been more and more. We don't need any more people here. We don't need the Tourist Development Council. We need 0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next speaker is Mike Millard.
And if you'll just make sure you speak into the microphone for me.
Sure.
Thank
Good
you,
evening.
sir.
Mike Millard. I'm a resident of Marathon. A practical question to start it with the commission. When I was here maybe a year ago, there are certain units which are actually held in reserve that people have given back to this city or holding in reserve in this city. I was wondering how many of those were. And I also heard previously that the school has building permits allocated for them for affordable housing for their teachers, and there's other organizations in Marathon. How many of those are still available or not being used? Brian?
Well, no, that you direct your comments to city council, and it's not a interrogation type situation. So you direct them to city council.
My point is, then fine.
No, the point is you're going to let me finish, is you direct your comments to city council, and if city council wants to in turn ask Mr. Shea or George or myself any other questions about the number of units or otherwise, then it goes that way. So
Yeah.
we address the front of the room.
Okay, that's my question. How many are still be held in reserve that developers have put back to the state to hold for them for some reason? Or certain organizations in Marathon already have allocated units, and I remember before the school board had 20 affordable units they weren't using, or something like this. I do not remember the number. That's one question. The second point is I haven't heard any discussion on improving the evacuation capabilities in parallel with the additional things. We have an airport here, we have sea evacuation, land evacuation, everybody focuses on the road. And I agree with everything that says the infrastructure is not suitable for this. But I'd like to hear more about, is there a possibility to reduce the risk of the population by improving our evacuation routes other than spending the $6 billion to make a highway to Miami? Thanks.
And Brian, do you have that number, or can you address that first part, his first question?
So most likely he was referring to administrative relief, and we have 12 units in admin relief.
Thank you.
The question about affordable housing units with the school board at this point, at one point they had 50. We worked with them on the Heron House to give them 3, so it's down to 47. But those are exclusively held by the school board, not by the city of Marathon.
Thank you for answering that. Sir, you can't.
I know.
If you'll see us after the meeting, sir, we'll be happy to.
It's available. They're already here.
We can discuss that further after the meeting. Do we have another speaker?
Next speaker, the last speaker on this topic I have signed in is Steve Britsky.
My name is Steve Britsky. I'm a Marathon resident. The one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is that more means more. So just because we have more allocations means we need more everything else. Just one more, just one more, just one more. I understand the issues with buybacks and taken cases. And, maybe looking for 50 in total may be a good thing, but more always is more. Be careful of numbers and statistics. I was a mechanical contractor. A little story, I had a basketball team that I sponsored. They wanted to use 7 men on their roster, and one night they couldn't get all 7. They needed someone to play. I don't play basketball. I went. I played basketball for about 5 minutes. I got fouled twice. I took 2 shots. That was it. I went home. The other guy showed up. I left. Weeks later, I have this big trophy put on my desk. I said, "Congratulations, guys, you won first place." They said, "No, this is yours." I said, "For what?" They said, "You shot 100% from the field, and you got this trophy." I made 2 shots in the whole time I was out there because I was fouled, and that gave me a trophy for being the best player in the league. So numbers are numbers. You can manipulate them to anything you want. Please pay attention to the numbers, and before this all happens, make sure what you're looking at is real and makes sense, because more just means more. More infrastructure, more money for fire departments, more money for water, more money. It's more, more, more. They don't come free, not to us.
Thank you, sir. I know we have a couple individuals on Zoom. Did they want to say anything? All right, hearing nothing, I'll bring it back to council. Mr. Matlock.
To Matt's comment, the GCs that are late on starting their build process with affordables, how many units do you know, Brian? How many are at that point?
So there is one that is awaiting pickup, and that is 42 units. So they need to pay and pick up the permits. And then there is another property with 14 and another property with 12.
And they're late on their pickup?
They haven't submitted the updated plans for those properties.
So are they technically in non-compliance, or what's?
So when we originally approved these, we then had the stop based upon the court case that put everything on hold. And now that has been resolved as of last legislative session. It became effective July 1. So we can reset that clock or give me direction on how you want to handle those additional applicants.
I guess the question is how many are in line behind them and for how long have they been waiting?
I have not looked at any new applications yet. I'll have to go look those up.
And then I guess my other question is their court case because of their own doing, or?
The court case was for the 300 units, not the other court case.
Okay. Okay. The borrow forward on affordables, I see that as a huge red flag. Why would we want to allow that? I feel like that allows one developer to come in, own property, raise his hand, and get all of them right off the bat. Is there a reason we're trying to do that? I feel like it just takes away your single-family homes right out. They're all going to be in massive developments. I guess I'm speaking to council on this too.
Are you talking about the 50 that I suggested we borrow from the county?
No. It was, I've seen verbiage in a document saying we can borrow from future years any affordable housing units. We're all sitting here. I figured I'd ask.
Mr. Smith.
I read that language, and I know in the past we have done that. I look at these agreements as something that we can facilitate, but any of those activities would have to come back in front of council for approval. So if you want to concentrate a development impact similar to the destination resort zoning the county did for years, where the theory being I will go ahead and manage the impact of the transient use on very specifically zoned properties, and I believe there was only about 5 of them at the time when they originally did this. The same concept could be said for affordable housing, where if I needed to have density and I wanted to go ahead and do that, if we don't allow that, I would say in the resolution, then we've tied our hands and we're going to have scattered. So I'm always one to allow, the possibility, but come back. I do agree that we don't want to go out, just like the perception that we're going to go build 8,000 units. We all know that it's less than that will actually be coming. We also know that it's going to be 30 to 50 years. Now in Marathon, if we project we've got 500 and change, we're talking about an 8% growth rate probably about over what our existing housing stock is over the next 30 to 50 years. Let's be real about what that number is versus, I had done some down and dirties, and I do thank George for bringing up the county study, because I had done down and dirties and just figures about 153 million is what we were probably looking at based on current values today. If the county had projected 136 million, that's probably pretty close. And I think the question would be to us is, or to a taxpayer, do you want to assume that tax liability or not? Now, the thing about going with a 30 or 50-year window, in my mind, of trying to chase, in essence, what's 500 building permits, it also, under our existing code, when you have a competitive system, if you narrow that down, people are buying lots and giving them to us and helping preserve that. So I think we all know that we're going to not build out the 8,000 units. The question is, they knew that 20 years ago when they decided on 3,000. We know it today. I think if we look at our code and how we go about allocating the BPAS, look at our BPAS scorecards and try to incentivize some additional scoring by donating land to us, which is what's happened in the past, we could minimize that. But to simply say that we're not going to have any more, I think everybody knew 20 years ago when this came up that we were going to have to extend and ask for additional units. I think the question becomes how much. My belief is, you ask for what you need because you don't know if you're going to get it down the road, and then look at how many you're going to give out over what time frame and what requirements are you going to have to incentivize additional private sector conversion. And part of that would be allowing additional borrow forwards for affordable. I wouldn't want to do it on market rate, that's for sure. But owner occupied and affordables, I think if you have an
an economics of scale through a density project, it's within reason, that has to come back to the council to be approved. I would like that ability to remain that we've used in the past.
Thank you, Jeff. Brian, do you know how much higher the percentage of affordables are in Marathon versus the rest of the county?
I do not know that number. I can tell you that we have received, as Bob and Roman mentioned, a lot of allocations from the county because we are centrally located. So a lot of the larger projects have gotten units that way through ILA.
I guess I'm gonna, and I understand what you're saying, Jeff. I guess talking to a lot of locals, most locals don't want to live in a big housing development. They don't mind if it's an affordable. You know, there's a big misconception on affordable housing and a house someone can afford. And a lot of people hear this phrase, affordable housing, oh great, I can go buy this single family home and I can afford it. But the reality is the majority of these rights are spent on massive developments, and most locals, I'm sorry, they don't want to live there. Most of them don't even want to live in a duplex. They want a single family home, and there's very few affordable, deed-restricted single family homes compared to these massive developments. And that's where I push back on being able to borrow from future years from the big developments, because I don't think that's what we want. We want families that want to live here and raise their kids and be invested in our community and stay here. And that is much more likely to happen in a single family home. That's my pushback on future year borrowing for that. I don't think it's how many can you pack in at that point. I think we've got enough of those massive developments in town.
Well, I agree that we need more single family. I thought when we switched over from owner-occupied to rental in our affordable focus many years ago that was probably a mistake, and everything we've done since has been rental property. I also think you have to look at your vacant land inventory and where you can do anything, and the majority of it on what we're talking about is going to be on single-family lots. We simply don't have large parcels of land anymore to do high-density development. But to take it away off the table, I don't know that I would be supportive of boxing us in where there's no flexibility for future councils. That's just my belief. But I do think looking at what we're looking at in our land inventories, everything's going to pretty much go single family. And then it becomes, do you want it owner occupied or do you want it workforce and rental? And I would be a strong proponent of going back to the old affordables, giving out to habitat and single family residence type developments as opposed to large rental projects, which I think we've certainly built a lot of those over the last 10 years.
Thank you. Anybody else?